Jews. Well, there are Jews here today and we are safe. And there is even that shambolic joke of a counter-protest over there. They are safe as well. Unfortunately.
No one cares.
It is simply not the case that Jews face a no-go zone in the CBD. It is a piece of propaganda mobilised to try and criminalise the Palestine movement. The Jewish Council of Australia has examined the various claims of anti-Semitism, and they reckon 80% of the incidents reported as anti-Semitic are not anti-Semitic, they are solidarity with Palestine. Chanting from the river to the sea is called anti-Semitic, and it's not. Wearing a keffiyeh is called anti-Semitic, and it's not. Jews are safe on the streets of Melbourne. The tragedy is the police have shut down our rally for Palestine today and pushed us to the margins. And so before I introduce our first speaker, our simple message is this: Palestinians are not our enemy. Palestinians are not a threat. Jews, Muslims, Christians, atheists, we have to stand united together against apartheid, against racism, against colonialism, against ethnic cleansing. We've done it before, we're here today to do it again, and we will continue that fight. Now, our first speaker today is Jacob Sacker. Jacob is an award-winning Jewish comedian, aren't we all? And Jewish studies researcher. He has been president of the Melbourne University Jewish Student Society and is currently undertaking a Masters by Research at Monash University. So please make Jacob welcome.
Thank you, David. David didn't say that I'm doing a Masters by Research in Jewish Studies at Monash University because I am a proud Jew. I am not a Zionist. And to conflate the two is anti-Semitic itself. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge that we are on the lands of the Wurundjeri, Woiwurrung and Boonwurrung peoples. For me, it is a matter of respect that if I am going to speak about Jewish history and the genocides that have happened to my people, the Jewish people, or about the genocides that have happened and are happening in Palestine, I must acknowledge the genocide that has happened right here. I live in the Jewish community in St Kilda East, up the street from Elwood, where for centuries was the home of the people of the Yalukit Willem clan of the Boonwurrung people. They were expelled from Elwood on April 19th, 1840. Among expulsions like this, other atrocities have occurred right here. There have been over 400 known massacres of First Nations people in this country. It is a mark on our nation's soul that we don't recognize these massacres and this genocide with the respect it deserves. Where are the museums? Where are the monuments? Where is the acknowledgement that structural racism against Aboriginal people is still prevalent? Perhaps there is no serious movement genocide occurring in Palestine. And it's rather been complicit in it. I'm here with this opportunity to condemn any anti-Semitism and racism towards Jews as a terrorist political game. And anti-Semitic attacks is disgraceful, but that acts and free speech against the state of Israel, as we have established time and time again. Yes, there is and has been plenty of Jewish suffering in the world. I refuse to let that Jewish suffering be used as a tool to obstruct peace. I refuse to let Jewish suffering be used to deny other people's suffering. And mostly, I refuse to let Jewish suffering be used to advocate for the suffering of the Palestinian people. Furthermore, I condemn the politicization of Judaism itself. A few months ago in this city, a synagogue, Caulfield Shul, held a political event, and that event was the target of a political protest. People decreed that protest as anti-Semitic. They said people were targeted at the place of worship. I will say this as clearly as I can. If you don't want to be protested at your places of worship, don't use your places of worship to run cover for your political events. Are you a synagogue or are you an arm for political party? There is no one Jewish political ideology, and to suggest that there is offensive and ahistorical. It is also obviously anti-Semitic to insist that all Jews have the same political beliefs, especially when those beliefs are about an entirely different country to the one we're in. Once again, racism and anti-Semitism of any kind has no place in Australia. But criticism of the Israeli state is not racist. It is not anti-Semitic. And to conflate these puts Jews at harm. I've been asked to say a word about my experience on university campuses. We know that racism and anti-Semitism occurs throughout this country, where Jews and other minorities have a tough time. I am once more saying that anti-Semitism should not be used as a political tool to ban academic freedom and the freedom of political expression. Currently, I'm at Monash studying Jewish studies. Previously, I was at Melbourne, where I was the president of the Jewish Student Society, which, for the record, is over 40 years older than the State of Israel. And in both those institutions, I met students, Jewish or otherwise, who confessed that they don't feel safe to declare their non-Zionist political views without fear of retaliation. Shame! It is my belief that one day all people in Palestine will be free. Palestinians and Jews, Muslims and Christians, people of any religion will have equal rights under the law and equal rights to live wherever they please. And to those who say that this is naive, that this could never happen, I would like to remind them that we are talking about Jews and Palestinians, two of the most resilient peoples to ever live. A better world for us is possible. Peace is possible. A free Palestine is possible. And I will leave you with a quote from the Jewish book of Pirkei Avot. It is not up to you to finish the task, but nor are you free to desist from it. Which task? From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.
From the river to the sea,
Palestine will be free.
From the river to the sea,
Palestine will be free.
Thank you, Jacob. That was absolutely amazing. And I stand in awe because I know how difficult it is for young members of the Jewish community to stand up against the prevailing political orthodoxy. I just want to say something more about anti-Semitism before I introduce our next speaker. We've been told that the Palestinian rallies are anti-Semitic and have encouraged anti-Semitic acts. That argument came from the butcher of Gaza, Netanyahu himself. What did he do in America just a few days ago? He went out of his way to greet Elon Musk. Elon Musk, who threw Nazi salutes at Trump's inauguration. Elon Musk, who has supported the Nazi organizer Tommy Robinson in Britain. Elon Musk, who went online to send a message to the Alternative for Germany Party's Congress, a party riddled with open Nazis, that they were doing a great job and they should not be weighed down by history. Elon Musk, who pushes the argument that George Soros is part of a Jewish conspiracy to organize and run the world. And Netanyahu went to Elon Musk and said, "You are a great friend of Israel. You have given repeated and forceful support for Israel's right to exist. So basically, Netanyahu has given us a choice. Do you stand with Israel and people like Elon Musk, or do you stand against racism and anti-Semitism? I think it's very, very clear. Down with Netanyahu, down with Elon Musk, down with Zionism. We stand for freedom, for liberty, for complete equality between Palestinians and Jews and all people. That's what the slogan "From the river to the sea" means. Now I'm very pleased to welcome our next speaker, Debbie Morgan-Frail. Debbie was until recently the National Aboriginal Education Officer with the Australian Education Union, which is the teachers' union, and she's a proud Wiradjuri woman from central New South Wales. Please make Debbie welcome.
Just to let people know, I may be a little bit shook because I wasn't basically attacked by the Zionists across the road, but thank you to the wonderful police officer that escorted me through. 3 grown men who attacked me and verbally abused me and put their phone in my face. Expect to see it on the internet. As a Wiradjuri woman from central New South Wales, I respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we gather on, the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung peoples of the Kulin, and pay my respect to the elders past and present. I recognise that their sovereignty was and never will be ceded over this land we stand on today. Thank you to the organisers of today's rally on genocide and racism for asking me to share, as a First Nations person, my perspective on the interconnectedness of our struggles within systemic and structural colonial imperialism and the First Nations history of standing with the Jewish and Palestinian community in what is now known as Australia, against dehumanisation and oppression. A disclaimer that, like all communities, one voice does not speak for the collective, just as not all of the Jewish communities speak for the collective, as not all Palestinians speak for Palestinians. I, as a First Nations woman, do not speak for all First Nations people. What I would hope we all stand for is the elimination of all forms of racism and discrimination in this country. It is a scourge that does and will continue to be a blemish on us all if we do not eradicate it. This includes the calling out of the use of it for political gain and leverage for ideology. I offer this as a disclaimer to remind those First Nations people who allow themselves to be the mouthpiece of Zionist ideology, our government and the mainstream media, whether that be those sitting in both houses of federal parliament, former athletes, business people or academics, that they also do not speak for the collective. They have a position, but I would also like to remind them that they have a responsibility that goes along with that position. That responsibility is to ensure the narrative they weave and disseminate is not the same narrative of dehumanisation, othering, or from a position of ignorance woven to oppress and marginalise First Nations people in this country for 230 plus years. When they reference the historic position of the great William Cooper's passionate struggle against the dispossession of Aboriginal people and the denial of their rights and lifelong fight for us to become citizens in our own country, then highlight that on 6 December 1938, less than a month after Kristallnacht, when Jewish Germans were targeted in widespread rioting and looting across Germany, he led a march to the German consulate in Melbourne to condemn the cruel persecution of the Jewish people by the Nazi government in Germany. They failed to mention in their woven narrative that he was not supporting Zionist ideology. He was activating against the dehumanisation and genocide of the Jewish people, one of very few who were in this country at that time. When a former Indigenous athlete goes on talkback radio with a shock jock, renowned for false narrative targeting Aboriginal people, and talks about these young ones who know nothing about the struggles we, which is questionable in her case, marched under over the years, used that flag at Palestinian protests, They have no idea what they are doing and disrespectful. I'm astonished that she has little understanding of the history between First Nations Australians and the Palestinian resistance, both here in this country and in Palestine itself. That history includes the many years of flying the Palestinian flag next to the original Aboriginal flag, found to be offensive, so we got a new one, above the embassy to reflect solidarity with the Palestinian people and their resistance against colonial regime. Whilst I'm not quite as old as the great man himself, Gary Foley, I grew up in an era of rights struggles, including the struggle for land rights in this country and resistance against the ongoing colonial oppression of my people. For me, in the twilight of my activism, this quote reflects many of our experiences as Aboriginal activists in our early days. He says, "I've been out here in support of our Palestinian brothers and sisters as I began to learn myself and understand about the nature of our Aboriginal people's oppression at the hands of the colonisers, at the hands of imperialism. I also began to see, once I learned from Palestinian brothers and sisters about what was happening to them, I realised the similarities, the parallels between our historical experience. You don't have to tell Aboriginal people what it's like to be subjected to genocide." After seeing that ex-athlete and another renowned Aboriginal person standing on the Israeli side of the wall, less than 4 kilometres from the massacring of Palestinian children, then returning to Australia denouncing the Palestinian struggle and supporting a Zionist position, sadly, I think in 2024-25, I think we do have to explain. They are pandering to the false Zionist narrative and the wails of anti-Semitism and every criticism of Israel in the Zionist regime, upholding the mainstream media and our government's constant focus on a constructed anti-Semitism that benefits two-party politics and their bipartisanship on Israel's position in the Middle East, whilst ignoring the daily structural and overt racism against First Nations people in this country. Real anti-Semitism against the Australian Jewish population and the constant racism and discrimination against the Palestinian people and the Arab population of this country more broadly. This position is not beneficial to this country. This is not beneficial to the authentic Jewish struggle. This dissemination of false narrative benefits no one other than those who hold extremist Zionist beliefs and the lining of corporate and political pockets at the expense of the thousands of dead Palestinian children, women and men. The criticism of the push forward by settler colonists into the Golan Heights, West Bank and Syria to establish the last phase of the Greater Israel colony as set out in the Balfour Declaration and the ongoing settler colonist expansion as we meet here today is causing many more murders and the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, Lebanese and Syrians, and is met yet again by our government and mainstream media with the false constructed narrative of anti-Semitism. Whilst ignoring the authentic anti-Semitism experienced in the Australian Jewish community, First Nations community and Palestinian community. Finally, we must come together in solidarity with the Palestinian people across the globe, not just in Gaza itself. We must resist the threatened capitalist takeover by the US and its corporate puppeteers who failed to recognise that Gaza once was the Riviera of the Middle East, as was Beirut and the broader Arab coastal areas, until the global powers inflicted years of regime change to allow their destruction of these beautiful and historic places where for thousands of years Arabs and Jews had lived in harmony and peace respectfully. In closing, I would like to offer this, taken from Isabella Hamad's book, Recognising the Stranger on Palestine and Narrative. There is a temptation to leap forward rhetorically, to reflect on the present. What will you have done? What that means is, there is still time. What that means is, time is running out. Every minute, according to World Health Organisation, a child is killed. It will be easy to say in hindsight, what a terrible thing. That was a terrible moment when the movements of the world were out of my hands. Do not give in. Be like the Palestinians in Gaza. Look them in the face and say, that's me. Mahmoud Darwish tells us, Gaza does not propel people to cool contemplation. Rather, she propels them to erupt and collide with the truth. The Israeli government would like to destroy Palestine, but they are mistaken if they think this is really possible.
Yes, they are.
Palestine is Haifa. Palestine is in Jerusalem. Palestine is in Gaza, and Palestine is in the Mediterranean Sea. And Palestine is alive in the refugee camps from Shatila to Yarmouk. Palestine is even alive and well in New York, or more locally Melbourne and Sydney. Do they really believe they can obliterate the Palestinian will to life? Their 70-year attempts, sometimes protracted, sometimes fast, to eliminate the native seems at times like the strategy of fools. Of course they will harden Gaza each time they bomb her. Of course they will force her resistance fighters underground. Possibly they know this very well and even desire it, since it provides a pretext to keep bombing. But they can never complete the process because they can never kill us all. Viva la Palestina! Viva la Palestina! Viva la Palestina!
Thank you, Debbie. That was fantastic. And Debbie noted that she's in the twilight of her activism. I think she's just getting warmed up. Let's chant again. From the river to the sea.
Palestine will be free.
From the river to the sea.
Palestine will be free.
Before I introduce our third speaker, I just want to say something about the victims of here in Australia who have stood up for Palestine. I want to say something in solidarity with Antoinette Lattouf, who was clearly treated in an abominable and racist way by the ABC for the crime of being Arab and for the crime of showing empathy with the Palestinian people. I want to say something in solidarity with Peter Layla. He's the cricket commentator, thrown off the SEN radio station for sharing tweets that referenced the brutality of Israel. And there are many other people whose lives have been turned upside down because they have stood on the side of Palestine against genocide. And some people say it's all about the Zionist lobby. Look at that shambles over there, I'm not so convinced. Yes, there is a Zionist lobby, but the reason they have influence is because they are pushing at an open door. The Australian government, the Australian ruling class is committed to the project of Israel, committed to the project of Western imperialism dominating the Middle East. And that's why the crimes of Israel are ignored and the views of Palestinian supporters are derided. Well, I say to Albanese, it's time to impose sanctions on Israel. It's time to expel the ambassador. It's time to support the court case against Netanyahu for genocide. It's time for once in your miserable, weak life, Albanese, to get off the fence and stand on the side of justice and against oppression. And when you refuse to do so, look at the Werribee by-election. Look at the way in which Labour's vote is collapsing, and the lesson surely from the United States is when you stand against Palestine, people will turn against you. Our third speaker today needs no introduction, which means I'll introduce her, of course. May Saif has been absolutely central to the Palestinian struggle for many years, and in particular since October the 7th. She's a Palestinian woman, a community organiser, a leading member of Free Palestine Melbourne, and a member of the Palestinian Community Association of Victoria. So please welcome May.
Thank you. I'd like to take a moment I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. As we've just heard, we stand on stolen land. We stand on a land with the blood of our Indigenous brothers and sisters who were massacred and experienced a genocide of their people, their culture, their heritage, and their stories. Their voices completely ignored and silenced. And even till this day, where there is a false understanding or acknowledgement of that, and I would say performative, we still don't know the true destruction and devastation and murder of their people to this day. I'd like to say that the Zionists and the racists have only hate in their hearts. They will come out and try and instigate the same violence they will perpetrate against the Palestinian people or those who speak to justice. And I ask you to not engage with them. To not engage with them. They do not deserve a platform or a voice or an iota of our time. Not an iota. Because they know that their voices stand for racism and violence and at the very, very disgusting sense of what we can see in our humanity. And what we stand for is of the very best of us and the very best of what we see in each other. I see your faces every single week, every day. And we know that we are a movement of peace and justice, equality for all, every single person. We know that we stand with every marginalised community, that we do not discriminate, that everyone is included, that our voices together and destruction. A small period of reprieve. But we also know as Palestinians that it is fleeting and momentary. Israel's policy, its very creation as an ethno-supremacist, Zionist colonial construct, is built on the idea of dispossessing Palestinians of their land and destroying them, murdering them, removing them. They feel threatened from the idea of Palestinian indigeneity to that land, their connection to that land. And it is why they silence our voices, they destroy our homes and our trees, and they appropriate our food and our culture and our clothes. Shame. As Palestinians, we also know that we have a rich history in that land where all types of religions and walks of life walk together side by side for generations. It may confound some of the racist Zionists and some of our politicians and media to think that a Palestinian woman could stand here and say, I have family that are Muslim, I have family that are Christian, and I have family that are Jewish. And we do not discriminate against each other. That land is for all of us. And we know that our Jewish brothers and sisters does not mean a false equivalency that you are also a Zionist. Zionism is a political racist ideology. It is an ideology. It is not a faith. And it is insane. It is absolutely insane the level of racism that marginalized communities have to state very clearly. One idea does not speak for all of us. The fact that our politicians and our media would rather push that racist narrative to cover and to hide behind their colonialism and their violence. Because that is what is happening. This country is a settler colonial country built on genocide. And it has been transplanted into Palestine and all parts of the world. And that is why it's very easy for them to be able to hide behind the racist narratives. So if you are part of this movement, then you know this is justice for every single one of us. It is an anti-racist movement. We do not stand for any forms of anti-Semitism, not one form of it. And we stand side by side together in solidarity with every single one of you. And to our brothers and sisters, our Jewish people, brothers and sisters here today, they know our story and struggle, and we know theirs. Now, there have been some amazing speakers today who are articulate and political, but it is important to remember that this is a human story. This is a human story. Our side, our enemies are too busy using narratives and bending themselves over backward to create a false story of alarm. But at the end of the day, this is a human story. It is a story where people are being persecuted for simply being Palestinian or being something different. We're not white enough. We're apparently uncivilized. And according to the Israeli state, we are barbarians that must be murdered because we are not even human. It is a human story against oppression. Palestinians have been living under an apartheid regime. It's important to understand what that means. The Israeli state, structurally, economically, controls every element of Palestinian life, from who they can marry, who they can befriend, where they can live, what water they drink, and their very voices. They control our media. But it is every single day people like us who care about justice, who care about humanity for all, who see that truth. And that is why our movement is strong and powerful and united. Because it is a movement of the people, for the people. And it is exactly that reason why they are running scared and bending over backwards to create false narratives. We know this. It's also why they can only draw a very pitiful crowd over there. We are not here for you. We are not here for your voice. We are here for Palestine, for Palestinian voices. We do not care what you think or what you do. What we care about is standing for justice and demanding equality. So do not be afraid, because they have tried to silence voices. And David has explained it. Latuf. Many Palestinian voices languishing in Israeli gulags right now because they uttered the word Palestine and carried that flag. Hundreds in prison because we carried our flag. Shame! Hundreds of voices in prison being tortured because we called for liberation and equality. Shame! Not just for ourselves, for all. For every single one of us. Because we don't discriminate. But we will continue. Because Israel has thrown everything that you could possibly imagine. In fact, they've thrown a level of violence that many of us could not even have thought of, could have even have considered. And that is how sick the Israeli state is. And yet we still stand proud, and we still stand defiant, and we still stand defiant of you, bloody Trump, and say we will not leave our homes. This is our land. It is not your holiday destination. Our blood is in their soil, our heritage, our stories, our families. You cannot take it from us. So our fight continues, and it will continue. And we have a part to play here in this country. We have an important part to play. It is because of these Western powers that provide cover for Israel. So we can demand our government to take a stand. Boycott, divest, and sanction Israel. We can do that here. Every single one of us. Because Palestine will not be free on its own. It will be free from everyday people. The people united.
We'll never be defeated.
The people united.
We'll never be defeated.
So I think maybe we want to have our Zionist friends over there hear Palestine's voice screaming over the crowd to them. What do you guys think? And maybe let's give them Palestine's voice, and now let's let it around the air. Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
From the river to the sea!
Palestine will be free!
From the river to the sea!
Palestine will be free!
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, we're getting ready to march in a few minutes to join the Palestine rally, but before that, we have one more excellent speaker. Before I introduce him, can I just encourage everybody wearing these t-shirts, Jews for a Free Palestine, to begin to move over here near the banner. We will take a group photo, and then we will have this banner at the start of the march down Lonsdale Street. Okay. Please do not be distracted by an isolated supporter of Israel. Our next speaker is very special. It's Jeffrey Lowenstein. And yes, he is Anthony's dad. Jeffrey was born in Australia to Holocaust survivors, practiced as a barrister for 50 years. He chaired the Anti-Defamation Commission of Australia and New Zealand, and was a member of the Jewish Community Council of Victoria. The Zionists say we are speaking for the Jewish community. We are not. We are speaking for the Jews who dissent against apartheid and genocide. We do not speak for them, we speak for ourselves. But if there is someone from the heart of the Jewish community who can speak with authority, it's Jeffrey. Please make him welcome.
I too pay my respects to the Aboriginal community, past, present and future. Many years ago, a very, very famous case went before the United States Supreme Court about obscenity, and that one of the justices famously said, "I know what obscenity is when I see it." Now, move that to the present time. We all know, without looking at any definition of genocide, that what is going on in Israel, and more particularly in Gaza and the West Bank, is genocide. But as a one-time barrister, I look for evidence, and the evidence comes from the Israelis themselves. Look at every statement made from Netanyahu down to other ministers of his cabinet. Destroy Gaza, nuke Gaza, just two of them. And then you go into the actual actions of Israel. What has Israel done? It's cut off water, it's cutting off food. Just think of it. We have people who are being restricted as to what they can eat because the Israelis determine what food goes into the country. And we see the end result of that. The untold toll on poor Gazans and Palestinians just generally. I won't go through the figures, you've read them all. But I must say it makes my heart bleed when I hear that there are 20,000 children who are orphans, no family. There are 900 families, and that means the entirety of the family, who have been totally wiped out. 70% of occupancy or places to live have been totally and utterly destroyed. The life of Gazans has been basically taken away from them. Netanyahu and his minions always say that Israel speaks for the Jews of the world. Let me say quite proudly, and I join those who are here who are Jewish, he does not speak for me, he does not speak for all the Jews. And when you hear the so-called Jewish lobby or people being interviewed on television or elsewhere speaking on behalf of the Jews of Australia, they do not. Many of those organizations are totally unelected. They make themselves spokesmen or spokespeople. So let it be made quite clear. Israel's actions are clearly and demonstrably genocide. Absolutely. No two ways about it. And it's got to be stopped. So I think that we can send a message, and I ask you to join in that message, whatever your denomination, that there are people out here in the world that say one thing: stop this slaughter of Gazans and Palestinians. And that includes not only Gaza, but the now ongoing action of the settlers and all the thugs in the West Bank. At the end of the day, can I make a plea to you? Forget about labels, anti-Zionist, anti-Israel, anti-whatever. Let the banner be decency and humanity. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. We'll finish with one more chant and then we're going to march. Can the people with the banner, Jews for a Free Palestine, move over towards Lonsdale Street? If you're wearing a Jews for a Free Palestine t-shirt, can you follow that banner? We'd like to make a visual impact as we march through the city. So perhaps the banner could start to move through the crowd. Am I hinting too subtly? Comrades, could you move the banner over there? All right, while the banner is moving, one more time. From the river to the sea.
Palestine will be free.
From the river to the sea.
Palestine will be free.
From the river to the sea.
Palestine will be free.
And when Netanyahu uses that slogan in his speeches, he means ethnically cleansed from the river to the sea. When we say that demand, we mean an end to apartheid and racism from the river to the sea. Thank you everybody who came today. It's been an amazing rally. The people over there must be feeling sick to the bottom of their stomachs because we've seen so many Jews and their supporters come out for Palestine. Now we're going to form up behind the banner, head over in that direction, and we're going to march down Lonsdale Street and join our comrades at the Palestine rally at the State Library. Thank you. Yeah, no, it's beautiful.
Sorry, Greg. No worries, I just didn't want you to fall backwards. Nice, David.
I've seen the second one that dropped yesterday, which is fantastic.
Thanks everyone. Restart again at 12 o'clock.